in many parts political. And moments ago, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton reacted, saying, quote, "What was done last night at the White House was a political rally. It further undermined the image and integrity of the court," she says. During the event, the president claimed that the sexual misconduct allegations against Kavanaugh had been disproved. That is not, in fact, the case. The Republican senators, the members of the Senate, and also Joe Manchin, decided not to put stock in the various women's stories of sexual assault. The president also painted Kavanaugh as the victim of a political hoax by Democrats, despite calling Christine Blasey Ford credible 10 days earlier. We'll get to that in just a moment. Let's begin.
Of our constitutional government. So I don't know how people are going to react to it. I think given our divides, it will pretty much fall predictably between those who are for and those who are against. But the president's been true to form. He has insulted, attacked, demeaned women throughout the campaign, really for many years leading up to the campaign, and he's continued to do that inside the White House.
All right, we'll hear more of that momentarily. Joining us now are Joshua Green, national correspondent at Bloomberg Business Week and a CNN political analyst, and Jonathan Martin, national political correspondent for the New York Times and also a CNN political analyst. Great to see both of you. Thanks. So, Josh, it did feel like a political event. I don't know if it was a political rally, but it felt like a political event. The president does turn everything political. He did go after the Democrats. He did insult the Democrats. This wasn't a sort of high-minded ceremonial swearing-in ceremony for Brett Kavanaugh, but the president didn't start that. I mean, think about Brett Kavanaugh's own second hearing, where he went full Clinton conspiracy instead of taking responsibility for why these accusations came out against him. He was so overwrought. He was so angry. He was so defiant. This has felt political for a while now, connected to Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kavanaugh made a decision in that hearing with Ford that he was going to cast his lot with Trump and with the idea of political polarization, essentially polarizing what has in the past been a largely, non-political process, or at least from the standpoint of the nominee. They've tried to avoid politics in a way that Kavanaugh brushed aside and embraced. So I think this kind of carries through what we've seen and what we may be seeing in the future of Supreme Court nominees, is that rather than try and strike a stance of nonpartisanship, they cast their lot with one party or the other and push ahead. But obviously this is something that caused concern not just among Democrats like Hillary Clinton, but among a strain of Republicans too, including perhaps Chief Justice John Roberts, who value the court, or what used to be the court's, nonpartisan image and ability to kind of rise up and have credibility beyond just the politics of one party or the other.
And one of the key questions that the Democrats face is, how do they respond? How do they deal with this? You have the Republicans, including the president, calling the Democrats and some of the women who've been demonstrating a mob. And I want you to listen. This is more sound we're just getting in from Christiane Amanpour's interview with Hillary Clinton moments ago. This is what the former Secretary of State says about that.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about. That's why I believe if we are fortunate enough to win back the House and/or the Senate, that's when civility can start again. But until then, the only thing that the Republicans seem to recognize and respect is strength. And you heard how the Republican members, led by Mitch McConnell, the president, really demeaned the confirmation process.
Interesting, J. Mart, there. You cannot be civil. And you, of course, have been covering very closely.
This is the woke Hillary Clinton, John. She's now going back to her Wellesley days as a student activist, I guess. Now, look, in all seriousness, politics doesn't really change, right? In 2010, the shoe was on the other foot. It was the right that was saying, well, you can't bargain with these people. They're changing the American health system here with Obamacare. We have no choice but to protest. And so it all kind of comes full circle. I will say, having just come back from North Dakota, where Hillary Clinton clocked in, I think, at about 27% of the vote in 2016. She isn't doing any favors for red state Democrats who are on the ballot less than a month from now by doing these appearances. I can tell you that she is still a major liability for Democrats in those states. Kevin Cramer, who's facing Senator Heitkamp, told me directly last week when I talked to him, he said, I will pay for Hillary Clinton for her to charter a flight and come into this state and campaign for Heitkamp. They are still using her as a weapon against Democrats. There's an ad on the air in North Dakota that basically merges Heitkamp and Hillary Clinton's name, Heidi and Hillary. So obviously she has strong feelings, but politically, if you talk to Democratic strategists and red state Democrats, they do not want to see her put down the election.
And Josh, particularly with this message, I mean, this message of you cannot be civil to the Republican Party, you know, that I think harkens back to the deplorables and when she was asked who her biggest, her biggest enemy is, or who maybe the biggest enemy is in general. And she said Republicans. I mean, that turned out not to be a winning message from Hillary Clinton then. And I understand that's how she feels now, but maybe it's not a winning message now.
Well, you know, calling Trump a sexist monster didn't work in 2016, leaving aside the fact of whether or not it's true then or now. And I think Clinton now is not so much campaigning for office as simply stating her feelings. And I think it's worth noting that what Clinton said and what she described is a feeling shared by a lot of women and men, too. But I really agree with Jonathan that the idea that she's out there on this sudden media tour 4 weeks before the election is pretty surprising. I got a leaked Republican National Committee poll about 2 weeks ago that had some striking internal findings. Republicans are divided on a lot of things, but the one single thing that unites them more than anything else, Republicans from all wings of the party, is their antipathy to Hillary Clinton. And the poll recommends that Republicans continue to talk about Hillary Clinton because it's a way of energizing their voters in an otherwise lackluster year. Well, I think Clinton is doing them a great favor by coming out and thrusting herself into the middle of the Kavanaugh scandal and showing up on TV 4 weeks before an election. I'd imagine that I would give not just Heitkamp, but a lot of incumbent Democratic senators in red states a lot of pause.
All right. It's kind of like Bush and Cheney, guys. If Bush and Cheney were to have emerged in 2010 when Democrats were trying to fire up their base and not doing a very good job of it, and if suddenly like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney appeared on the campaign trail in October, I think President Obama would have loved that, to have kind of reminded his voters about what is in their mind, the bad old days, you know?
Take her out of it, though. If you take Hillary Clinton out of it, and I think these points are incredibly valid, and you know, Republicans may be saying thank you to CNN for airing this morning, but if you take her out, Jonathan, how do Democrats approach the next 28 days? Because what Hillary Clinton is saying is there's got to be a way to harness the anger that's out there. How do you harness and focus the anger that's out there without looking to maybe swing voters like the mob that Republicans are accusing you of being?
It's a great question. I think it totally depends on what part of the country that you're talking about. This is going to be a campaign year, which has basically, very different themes depending upon where you are. The Senate map, John, as you know, is playing out in a different slice of the country than most of the House campaigns are. The Senate map is much more conservative leaning, much more rural. The House map tends to be more suburban, more